My God, these hieroglyphics, they could hold ancient and arcane secrets. The mysteries of magic and life itself coded behind these fragmented, indecipherable images. Damn my younger years, I should have taken that class in archaic grognard like Father said. An ancient relic! No, it's just a hat. But mayhap! An ancient hat! What secrets could this once Dresden cosplayer have locked behind this wide-brimmed hat?
It is I, the ghost of Grognard's past, here with a message from beyond the fourth wall.
What was that?
The beyond the fourth wall. You're making us look at it backwards, you idiot. Turn it around and tighten it up.
Hi there. I know it's been a minute, but I was hoping to answer the questions that you guys left in the comments on video. What games will I be covering in the future? Good question that deserves a good answer I do not have. I plan on bringing in guests to deliver a little variety into all of our lives, and maybe talk about some less used tables and chapters in the Genesys system. At the moment, I do not have another system in mind, but that does not mean they're not on the table. Flip your video, all of the book titles are backwards. I'm worried that Fantasy Flight Games is out of business. They released a tweet saying they'd cancel their entire RPG line, including the Star Wars games. Don't worry. They actually moved all of their RPG lines over to a studio called Edge, and are producing new books over there, including Genesys, Legend of the Five Rings, the End of the World line of RPGs, and their new setting, Midnight, Legacy of Darkness. A 5th edition SRD-based fantasy world themed around battling a dark god's legion of foes. Hashtag not sponsored. And with all of last video's questions answered, let's move on to new business. Today we're going to be talking about character creation in the Genesys RPG system. Now I know there was a lot of confusion the first time that I tried doing it on my own, so I'm here to answer basically what were my questions when I first started trying to learn the Genesys system, because I figure you'll run into them too. So we're going to start with the first step and just go. At the very beginning of character creation, you first have to pick an archetype to base your character on. There's the basic 4 in the Genesys rulebook, but your storyteller might be using specific archetypes as well that they wanted to include. They're found in several places. There's some in the back of the core book in the suggested settings section, as well as the expanded player's guide. There's going to be some in any setting-specific peripheral book that they've published, or perhaps your storyteller has made their own archetypes for their own setting. Either way, check with your storyteller to know what's on the table. Your archetype provides several stats that you're going to need all throughout character creation. Your starting characteristics, your starting wound and strain threshold, your starting experience, your starting skills, and any additional starting abilities. Characteristics are like attributes from D&D. They determine how good your character is at certain aspects of the game. If you want to know what characteristics are good for what, then I suggest jumping ahead and looking at the character sheet and just reading the skills. They'll all have a characteristic abbreviation next to them in the skill section, and you'll get a good idea for what pertains to what. Brawny is like strength, agility is like dexterity, but it gets a little fuzzy and cloudy when you get down to willpower, cunning, and presence. So give it a look. Unlike attributes in D&D, characteristics do not need to be reduced to a bonus. Just think that 1 is sub-average, 2 is average, 5 is human perfection, and 6 would be superhuman. A key difference between this and the Star Wars Fantasy Flight system is that the characteristics don't go up to 6 anymore. Unless you're playing something like a superhero game where it mentions using a level 6 attribute, most of the time you're just going to go up to 5, and they recommend that you keep it at 5 for balance reasons. Your wound threshold is how much damage, physical damage, you can take without going unconscious. Think of it like HP. Your strain threshold is how much exertion you can put yourself through before you pass out. Think of it like a resource like stamina. Just keep in mind that your strain can take you out of the fight if you let it reach 0. Each of these thresholds has a characteristic tied to it that will give it a boost to character creation. Brawny characters get more wounds, and strong-willed characters get more strain. Starting experience is very important. This is how you build your character to be unique. Chef's Kiss. Every archetype should have its own XP value, so keep your eye on that moving number. We'll be going over how to spend XP soon. Every archetype has some sort of starting skill. It could give you 1 specific skill, it could give you a choice between 2. I know that there's an archetype out there that gives you 3 free ranks, but there's always going to be something in the starting skill section. Starting skills have a very specific rule. You can't, for any reason, go over 2 ranks in a skill of character creation. We're going to mention that again later because it's important. But for now, when you get your first few ranks from your archetype, write them down and keep in mind that you can't raise them above 2. Finally, an archetype has unique abilities that sets it apart from other archetypes. This could be a character being able to shapeshift, or have access to natural weapons, or something as meta as manipulating the story point pool. Either way, you're going to want to write it down and make use of it because it's going to be what separates your archetype from someone else's archetype. After you go through your archetype, the next thing you're going to hit is a career. It doesn't seem very consequential, but this affects how you spend your XP a lot in character creation. Careers are a simple choice laid out starting at page 40 in the core rulebook. Career decides both your starting skills and your class skills. Class skills we're going to go over later when we're spending XP, but keep in mind, again, that when you're picking your starting skills from your career, you can't put anything higher than 2 ranks at character creation. Later on, once you're out of character creation and you're spending your XP from your general sessions, you can buy as high as you want. But for now, 2 is the limit. You cannot go higher than 2 ranks at character creation for any reason unless something explicitly says it breaks that rule, which is very rare. This rule only applies to skills, it doesn't apply to characteristics, and it doesn't apply to talent. When you choose a career, it gives you a list of skills to mark down. It then tells you to fill in ranks in a certain number of them. XP! Spending it, earning it, loving it, but mostly spending it. XP is spent 3 ways at character creation. Bum, bum, bum! In order of importance. Attributes, talents, and skills. Seriously, this stuff, just forget about it if you can, okay? You want to spend as much in attributes as possible. Something that they point out in the rulebook, finally. Cannot stress enough how important it is to spend most of your XP on attributes. It's huge. It's massive. It's a mistake if you don't spend most of your XP on this. Unless you're down to 15 and you can't do it anymore, you're probably doing it wrong. I don't want to sound like a snob when I say that, but it's really that important. It's so important, they actually mention it in the core book now. Cutaway. Buying characteristics uses the following math. Put into words, you need to buy ranks in order of acquisition, 1 rank at a time. 2, then 3, then 4, and the cost of buying each new rank is 10 times the new rank's value. So, if you're buying Brawn to rank 3, that's going to cost you 30 experience. If you then wanted to buy Brawn to rank 4, that would cost you 40 for a total of 70. Talents are quirks that give your character unique abilities. These are listed in the talent chapter in your core rulebook, but in order to explain buying talents, I'm going to have to explain the talent pyramid to you first. The pyramid is an idea cooked up by Genesys in order to structure the way in which you purchase talents. Put simply, you need to have more of a previous tier of talents before you can buy the next tier of talents. Here's some math to make it easy to remember. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. That actually does not make it easy to remember. This is actually one of the few times I like to try and include these little math things to make it a snapshot in your brain to hopefully remember how this works. But it doesn't actually work for the pyramid. The best way to visualize the pyramid is to actually think of a pyramid. In order to buy 1 tier 2 talent, I need to have 2 tier 1 talents. And it looks like this. If I have 1 tier 1 talent, I cannot buy a tier 2 talent because I do not have more tier 1 talents than I would tier 2 talents. Once you have 2 tier 1 talents, you have a strong foundation to put your 1 tier 2 talent on. In order to buy a tier 3 talent, a single tier 3 talent, I must first have 2 tier 2 talents and 3 tier 1 talents, which look like this. Because, like its namesake, it's shaped like a pyramid. You could have a ziggurat, but you can't buy a new tier if you only have 1 of the previous tier. You also can't buy more of a new tier until you have enough of the previous tier to outnumber it again. So if I had 2 tier 1 talents, I could only ever buy 1 tier 2 talent. If I ever wanted to buy another tier 2 talent, I would need to buy another tier 1 talent, and so on and so forth down the pyramid. So then we move on to the easy part. What do each of these talents cost? It's simple. There's the math. Put verbally, A talent costs 5 times the cost of the tier. If I'm buying a tier 1 talent, that's only going to cost me 5 XP. If I'm buying a tier 2 talent, that's going to cost me 10 XP. If I'm buying a tier 3 talent, that's going to cost me 15 XP. And so on and so forth. Skills are bought like characteristics. You need to buy them in order one at a time. You wanted to buy a new rank of talent, you can't just skip to 5, you need to buy them in order. 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. A skill costs 5 times the new rank to buy if it's a class skill. If it's not a class skill, you need to pay an additional 5 XP per rank. To put it into math terms, it looks like this. If it's a class skill, you get a discount. If it's not a class skill, you don't get the discount. In order to buy one tier 1 skill, it's going to cost you 5 XP if it's a class skill. If it's not a class skill, it's going to cost you 10 XP. If you're buying a rank 2 skill and it's a class skill, it will cost you 10 XP. But if it's not a class skill, it's going to cost you 15 XP. In addition, the book would like you to consider some other tidbits when you're making your character. These are narrative. But I persuade you to not overlook them because the Genesys dice system is the narrative dice system. It's all about telling a story. I'm wagging my finger at you. The book would like you to consider some narrative elements to your character. This is something I glossed over to get to the confusing chunky bits of character creation. However, these parts are no less important because they inform the storyteller what you're trying to do with your character narratively. Desire, fear, strength, flaw. Each of these has a table worth of examples to consider, but I recommend you go and read them yourself. But in order to entice you a little bit, let me give you some insider baseball. A little secret. Genesys is a narrative role-playing game focused on narrative. If you role-play well and play up your desires, fears, strength, and flaws, the storyteller might reward you with story points or even juicy XP at the end of session. So I hope that entices you a little bit into reading. What do these other blocks mean? If you're asking about soak, then soak is a measurement of how much damage you reduce on any attack that hits you. Soak is an additive value that you get between adding up your brawn characteristic and whatever armor you might be wearing. Say, for example, I'm wearing a leather jacket that has 1 soak and I have a brawn of 3. I have a total soak of 4. It's all additive, but there are limitations. For example, I doubt your storyteller will start letting you put on several layers of a leather jacket to get additional soak. You wear 1 thing of armor. Come on now. Don't be like that. When it comes to soak, be wary of a little rating on weapons called Pierce, because Pierce can ignore your soak. If you're asking about defense, defense is a lot harder to come by. Defense lets you add setback dice on attacks against you. It's broken into 2 boxes because certain benefits might confer only a defense rating to ranged attacks or melee attacks. Baseline, you're not going to have a defense rating. That's something you usually pick up from talents or storytelling rewards for good roleplay. So just keep your eye out in those sections. If you made it this far in the video, first, thank you very much. But let me leave you with one more piece of advice. Always keep track of what you spend your starting experience on. I can't tell you how many times I have been ever grateful to myself for making a note on my character sheet that I spent my 105 XP on the following things and just separate that from the rest of my earned experience. There'll be plenty of times when you go back trying to make sure you've spent all of your XP correctly, and you're going to be real grateful that you haven't mapped out that this first 105 went here. Thank you again for watching the video. Coming up in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be starting a new live play Genesys game. We're playing in the Weird War game setting. Join us as an elite team of allied super soldiers do battle against the shadowy cabal of Nazi forces trying to collect dastardly tools and super weapons to end the war before it even really begins. My God, these hieroglyphics. There's nothing up there, Moxie. It's a gag. Please get down. Please get down. Please get down. You naughty, naughty dice monger. I'm wagging my finger at you, you naughty, naughty metagamer.
I'm here to tell you, you're looking at it backwards, you fucking idiot. Turn it around, tighten it up. Now it is I who wears the big hat. Heh, 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 heh. Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. How do you do?
I'm Paul Simon. You can call me Al. Mahowdy. Mahowdy. Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling Valentine. Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling Valentine. I will treat you and beseech you, and I'll treat you all the same.